All right, everyone, get ready, because today we're going deep on something pretty unique.
Oh, yeah.
Nepal's constitutions.
Interesting.
They've had, get this, seven
Wow, 7?
constitutions throughout their history.
That's a lot of change.
It really is. Each one is kind of like a snapshot
Yeah.
of how the country has been trying to,
Right.
create stability, be inclusive, all that good stuff. And the source we're using for this is actually a student presentation,
Okay.
which I think is interesting because
Yeah.
how do we think critically
Right.
about any source, even if it seems simple, right?
That's such a good point. I mean, the student presentations are great. They're great starting points.
Yeah.
But you always have to, like, dig deeper,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Question the assumptions that are made. Look for those aha moments. Yeah.
Exactly. So let's go all the way back to 1951.
Okay.
Nepal's very first written constitution.
Wow.
Now, this was during the Rana regime. So these were hereditary prime ministers,
Okay.
not kings. They held the real power.
Interesting.
But what's really fascinating is that this constitution was considered super progressive
Yeah.
for its time, especially when you think about the context of South Asia.
Right.
Lots of countries there were just coming out of colonialism.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
It is. I mean, it makes you think, right? Like,
Yeah.
This 1951 Constitution
Yeah.
includes all these provisions for fundamental rights,
Mm-hmm.
freedom of speech and religion,
Yeah.
assembly.
Yep.
It even guaranteed free primary education,
Wow.
which was, I mean, groundbreaking,
Yeah.
especially in a place where access to education was really limited for a lot of people.
Mhm.
So you really have to wonder, like, why did the Ranas do this?
Right.
Was it a genuine move
Yeah. Yeah.
towards democracy? Or was it more about appeasing people who were unhappy?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Like trying to keep things calm,
Yeah.
keep everyone happy-ish.
Keep a lid on things.
Right. It's almost like they were trying to like walk this tightrope, right,
Mhm.
between tradition
Yes.
and this rapidly changing world around them.
Yeah. It's a tough spot to be in.
Totally. But, this balancing act didn't last very long.
Oh.
In 1959,
Okay.
a brand new constitution comes in.
Hmm?
The Rana regime's over. King Mahendra's on the throne.
Okay.
But then, get this, just a year later,
Yeah.
he dissolves parliament.
What?
And in comes the panchayat system.
Okay, so big shift.
Huge.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the 1962 Constitution,
Right.
which is, it's a completely different direction.
So from what it sounds like, the panchayat system is really where the monarchy starts to, like,
Oh, yeah.
consolidate power.
Completely. It becomes a partyless state.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in a really short time, Nepal went from trying these kind of progressive ideas to a system that was all about,
Yeah.
power in the hands of the king.
Yeah. What do you think caused that to happen?
Well, King Mahendra, his argument was that Nepal just wasn't ready
Oh, interesting.
for a multi-party democracy.
Yeah.
Too chaotic, too divisive.
Uh-huh.
He wanted something more,
Controlled.
guided,
Yeah.
emphasizing consensus, traditional values.
Interesting.
And you have to remember, this was during the Cold War.
Right.
A lot of countries, especially in Asia, were,
Yeah.
dealing with this fear of communism.
Yeah. Trying to find their own way.
Exactly. Trying different things.
So, what was going on in Nepal internally was really connected to
Oh, yeah.
global events.
Absolutely.
The world's a complicated place.
It really is. You can't separate these things out.
No, you can't. But, as with most things in life,
Right.
the panchayat system, not without its critics,
I was going to say, it can't have been all smooth sailing.
not at all.
Yeah.
So this 1962 Constitution, sure, it was about stability,
Mm-hmm.
unity, but there was a lot of discontent brewing.
Right. So what were people unhappy about?
Well, many felt like their political freedom was stifled.
Okay.
Like they didn't have a voice.
Right.
And certain groups felt marginalized,
Yeah. Makes sense.
like women, Dalits, ethnic minorities.
So not really representing everyone equally.
Exactly. And all this dissatisfaction combined with,
Yeah.
socioeconomic factors, it just created this,
Like this pressure cooker.
just simmering beneath the surface.
Right.
And it boiled over
Oh, wow.
in 1990.
Okay.
Huge protests.
Wow.
People demanding a return to multi-party democracy.
So they wanted change.
Big time.
Yeah.
And this leads to the 1990 Constitution.
Right.
Which is, it's a turning point for Nepal.
It must have felt like a huge moment.
Absolutely. After decades of the panchayat system, Nepal is back to,
a multi-party system.
Exactly. Back to this democratic framework.
It's interesting, though, because even with these big changes, transitions like that are never easy.
Oh, of course not.
There's always challenges.
Yeah.
And just because you bring back multi-party democracy doesn't mean that all of a sudden the inequalities are gone.
All the problems are solved.
Yeah.
Yeah, no magic wand.
No, unfortunately not.
So the 1990 Constitution, it was a step towards greater political freedom.
For sure.
But it also showed how hard it is to build a truly inclusive democracy.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And this is where things take another turn.
Okay.
Those issues that the 1990 Constitution was trying to address, right? The marginalization, the feeling of exclusion.
Yeah.
That's what fueled this new challenge.
Uh-oh.
The Maoist insurgency.
So you have all this tension, right? Social and political tension.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Maoist insurgency coming into the picture. It's almost like trying to build a house on shaky ground.
That's a great analogy.
Can you give us kind of a little more context on the Maoists?
Yeah, so the Maoist insurgency, it really started in the late 1990s.
Okay.
And it came from a lot of deep-seated grievances.
Right.
Things like poverty, inequality, and the feeling that certain groups were just excluded.
Not left out.
From the political process.
They didn't have a say.
Exactly. And the Maoists, they were inspired by communist ideology.
Okay.
And their goal was to overthrow the monarchy.
Wow.
Establish a communist republic.
Big changes.
Big changes. And they believed in armed struggle to achieve that.
So this plunged Nepal into a decade-long conflict.
It did.
And I imagine that just added a whole new layer of complexity.
Oh, yeah.
Onto Nepal's already complicated constitutional journey.
Absolutely.
How do you even begin to think about constitutions when a country is in the middle of a war?
It's a huge challenge. How do you address these issues when there's so much going on?
Yeah.
But what's remarkable is that even with all this turmoil, Nepal still found a way to move forward.
That's incredible.
It is. And, in a way, the insurgency, as devastating as it was, it kind of forced everyone to the table.
Oh, interesting.
To negotiate.
Yeah.
And that led to the Comprehensive Peace Agreement in 2006.
Okay, so turning point.
Huge turning point.
Yeah.
And that agreement really set the stage for the 2006 interim constitution.
Right, which reflects all this change that was happening.
Absolutely. It was a very pivotal moment for Nepal.
Yeah, and this is where we see another major shift.
Okay.
Nepal declares itself a secular state.
Wow.
It's no longer a Hindu kingdom.
That's a huge change.
It is.
For centuries.
Yeah.
The monarchy and Hinduism, they were like intertwined.
Right, inseparable.
And then this 2006 Constitution comes in.
Yeah.
And it's trying to create a more inclusive state.
Yeah.
Recognizing all these different religious groups.
Right, so a very bold move.
Very bold. And you can imagine not everyone was thrilled about it.
Oh, I bet. It's like trying to change the rules.
Yeah.
While the game is still going on.
Right.
There's going to be pushback.
Absolutely.
And along with this whole idea of secularism, this interim constitution also sets the stage for another major shift.
Oh, okay. What's that?
Federalism.
Ah, okay.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so federalism, it's basically about decentralizing power.
Okay, so spreading it out.
Exactly. Instead of having all the power concentrated at the national level, you share it with these provincial or state governments.
The different levels of government.
Exactly.
Got it.
And the 2006 Constitution, it kind of laid the groundwork for this.
Okay.
But it was really fully realized in the current Constitution.
The 2015 one.
Yes, exactly. And this officially made Nepal a federal democratic republic.
So from absolute monarchy to a federal republic, it's just mind-blowing.
I know, right? All in, what, a little over 70 years?
It's a lot of change.
Like they were constantly trying to find that balance between having a strong central authority and giving regions more autonomy.
Yeah, that's sweet spot.
Yeah. But as we've seen, it's not easy.
No. putting these ideas into practice,
it's really hard.
Is a whole other challenge.
Yeah, I mean, implementing federalism, it's complex, especially in a country like Nepal.
Right, so diverse.
So diverse. You have different ethnic groups, languages, geographical challenges, and these historical power structures that you have to consider.
Yeah, like it's not just about drawing lines on a map.
Exactly. It's not that simple.
And saying, okay, you're a province now, good luck.
Right. You have to think about how resources are going to be shared fairly. Do the local governments actually have what they need to function?
Yeah.
And are the rights of marginalized communities being protected?
At all these different levels.
At every level. That's the key.
So the work really begins after the Constitution is written.
Exactly. The 2015 Constitution, it's a landmark achievement for sure.
Yeah.
But it's a starting point.
Okay.
It's a framework.
It's a roadmap.
Yeah.
But the success really hinges on what happens out in the real world.
Out in the real world. You know, you still have debates about how to allocate resources.
Right.
How to make sure different groups are represented in the government.
Yeah.
And just finding that balance of power between the federal government and those provinces.
It seems like Nepal's constitutional journey is all about adapting, evolving, constantly trying to fine-tune things to really reflect what the people need.
Exactly.
And what they want.
And their aspirations for the future.
It's not about finding that one perfect solution.
Right.
It's about making a system that can change.
That's flexible.
I can adapt as new challenges come up.
I love that. That's a great way to put it.
So the 2015 Constitution, it's not the end of the story.
It's not.
It's really like the beginning of a new phase in Nepal's journey to create a stable and inclusive country.
I completely agree.
It's amazing when you think about it.
It is.
How much Nepal has gone through.
Yeah.
In what, like 70 years?
It's not a long time.
Not at all.
When you think about it.
No.
Yeah.
They've gone from absolute monarchy to a federal republic. And each constitution, it shows a different step.
It's like a marker in time of this evolution.
Exactly.
It's really fascinating.
And in this student presentation, they talk about how Nepal's been trying to get to a constitution that really represents all of its citizens.
Yeah, that's the goal.
But is that even possible?
It's a great question.
Right. I mean, can one document really capture
it's hard.
All the different needs, desires of everyone?
It's something that, I mean, democracies all over the world are struggling with.
Right.
How do you
balance?
Yeah, how do you balance that need for everyone to feel like they're part of one thing?
Yeah, unity.
While still recognizing all the differences.
Yeah, all the different...
The diversity that makes up a society.
Right, because you can't just pretend...
You can't ignore it.
That those differences aren't there.
Exactly.
Those inequalities.
And even if you try to be inclusive, there's always a chance that some groups are going to feel like
left out.
Yeah, like they're not being heard.
Like their voices don't matter.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to remember that constitutions, they're not the end. They're not like, oh, we did it, we're done.
Yeah, they're not set in stone.
Exactly. They should be a starting point.
A framework.
Yeah, for ongoing dialogue.
Right. We're always
adapting, always talking.
Yeah, always trying to improve things.
So it's not about finding this perfect constitution. It's about creating a system that can evolve.
That can grow.
Yeah, as things change.
Right, because things are always changing.
Exactly. That's the only constant.
So it takes people.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. It takes active citizens. People who know their rights.
Yeah, who are engaged, who are informed.
Yeah, who participate.
Yeah.
And who are willing to challenge things.
To speak up, to say, hey, this isn't working.
Right, when things aren't right.
And that's what I think makes studying constitutions so interesting.
It really is.
It's not just about these legal frameworks. It's about understanding power, how societies change over time.
Yeah.
And that constant back and forth.
Yeah, that tension.
Between individual rights.
Right.
And our responsibilities to each other.
To the community.
Exactly.
I have to say, this whole deep dive has really been eye-opening for me.
Me too.
I'm looking at constitutions in a completely different way.
I hope our listeners are too.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Whether it's Nepal's journey or thinking about their own countries, there's always something new to learn.
Absolutely.
About how these things work.
So as we wrap up
our
deep dive on Nepal's constitutions, what's the one thing
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah, the one thing you hope our listeners really take away from this.
I would say that constitutions are important. They're really important, but they're not the whole story.
Right.
They're a tool.
Okay.
They're a way to get to something.
They're a means to an end.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
So it's not just about the words that are written down.
It's about what happens.
Yeah, what happens next.
After those words are on the page.
Right. Like, are those words actually creating
a just society?
A fair society.
A place where everyone has a chance.
Where everyone feels included.
Exactly.
That's something to think about.
It is.
Well said.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Of course. It was my pleasure.
And keep those questions coming.